The Department of Defense in Australia has released a 10-page dossier on UFOs. So let's talk about that and a whole lot more. So get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you think. Okay, here we go. This is from the Mandarin.com from Australia. The Department of Defense has released 10 pages of documents about UFOs in response to a FOIA. The dossier includes 17 defense communications about UFOs and UAP created between July and October 2023. The key message is defense has no particular interest in the subject. One document clarified defense stopped actively monitoring for UFOs in 1996. There was no scientific or other compelling reason to continue to devote resources to the recording and investigation of UAP. Ross Coulthard's not super happy with this report. He says Australia is playing coy on UAPs. Why did the defense tell a senator they had not spoken to their U.S. counterparts about UAP, yet later admitted it had sent an attaché to discuss the matter? And Ross has talked about that before. He's also discussed evidence that that Australia engages in UFO crash retrievals. They are working with the Five Eyes on UFOs. It's just like everywhere else. They're doing their own UFO stuff behind closed doors, but publicly they tell a different story. When will that change? It's starting to change in the U.S. a little bit. You have different factions that are doing different things. You have the pro-disclosure group within Congress itself, and then you have the anti-disclosure group. Some of them are in Congress too. And then you have the pro-disclosure people within the UFO control group that are working with people like David Grush and Mike Carrera. And you have the anti-disclosure people, the sort of people that David Grush had to put, a reprisal, had to go to the IG about reprisals for, and talked about, bureaucratic terrorism. So, there is, however, the pro-disclosure faction within the U.S. and stuff coming out. We are not seeing that from other places, but hopefully we will soon. Meanwhile, a little update on Mario Woods. I talked a little bit about him the other day. David Haith has given us a breakdown of that interview with some additional information. So thank you, David. Nuclear missile security officer Mario Woods has revealed he responded 4 times in almost as many years when missiles went into launch mode on their own. Yeah, I'll say that again. Missiles went into launch mode on their own, with a little UFO help. And he said there was even a procedure for mystery auto-sequence launches, which involved a response team parking a vehicle on the blast door missile launch pad. If the missile launched, the thinking was the blast would cause the truck to fall down inside the silo and destroy the rocket's guidance system, causing it to crash into the ground. He says the emergency procedure followed several sightings of saucer-type craft. Mario said no one ever came up with an explanation for how this could happen. So it happens so often that they have procedures to deal with this. I mean, why didn't the UFOs just take out the whole site or just totally render it all, non-functional if they were so set on, sabotaging this stuff? Why not just make it a clean sweep? Why keep going there and doing this? That's weird, but, until we can ask the beings what their deal is, we're not going to know, but very interesting. Meanwhile, from Ashton Forbes, the Salvador Pais patents are real. Brandon Weichert is a consultant for the Air Force. In 2021, he spoke with C-SPAN about the Pais UFO patents and argued that they could be terrestrial technology. The Secretary of the Navy said, "Yes, we're building them. Yes, we're experimenting with them. Yes, we've created prototypes of things like the inertial mass reduction technology because we know for a fact that China has already built these systems." And you can watch this clip of him saying exactly that. So for sure China and Russia and other places likely have UFO, crash retrieval teams and reverse engineering teams, and some of them may have made some progress. Have some of them exceeded our own progress, forcing us to do things like the Salvatore Pais patents? Pais patents. Say that 5 times. Okay. No, I'm not going to do it. Okay. The Salvatore Pais patents are fascinating, and Kurt Jemongel on Theories of Everything interviewed him maybe a year ago. Really interesting stuff. I had, and you probably had heard about those patents before, where they're basically patenting UFO technology, and apparently that is an operable technology. So. What are they doing with that technology? It's very interesting because that is in the public sphere, right? We know about those patents. They seem to have had UFO technology for a long time. Whistleblowers from Lockheed Martin and other places were talking about them working with the beings from the late 50s to the early 60s and developing UFO technology. And that seems to be roughly the timeline we're looking at. But at an upper level of the control group, you got the reverse engineering, you got the Area 51, you got Bob Lazar and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe at a level above that, you have the Salvatore Pais patents. Maybe a few levels above that because they admit to the Salvatore Pais patents. But the idea that China could have leapfrogged us with this technology is very interesting. Now, I don't think they've leapfrogged us completely because we have had this technology for a long time. My wife is Chinese. I went to China 20 years ago. Everybody was driving bicycles. Now they've all got cars. China has come a long way in 20 years. But back then, they weren't that fancy. However, they were involved with in the UFO control group. According to Lance Corporal Jonathan Wygant, China was part of the UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering team, part of the hub that was in Peru at the time, this multinational group. So China has been involved. So could the UFO control group in China, the secret part of China, have exceeded the U.S. or other countries? Totally possible, guys. Anything's possible. Anything's on the table because all of this stuff is done behind closed doors, and we only know some of the public stuff like the Salvatore Pais patents. Is there an equivalent to that in China? If there is, let me know in the comments below. But it's definitely interesting food for thought that an adversary nation could have gotten further than we have. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan says UFOs and drug use are in the Bible. Okay, the Bible's getting spicy, guys. The Bible's getting spicy. Joe Rogan discussed whether the Bible depicts UFO sightings and drug use during a recent installment of his popular podcast. The broadcaster, whose podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, is among the world's most listened to shows, delved into the matter during a discussion with writer, producer, and director David Holthouse. Holthouse and Rogan spoke about the various UFO sightings over the years and theorized that they could be evidence of top-secret military projects or alien life forms. Among the several ideas thrown forward, Joe Rogan also floated the theory that UFOs have always been present on Earth, before putting up scripture from the Bible's Old Testament book of Ezekiel, which speaks of an encounter with unknown beings. And yeah, we've heard Tim Burchett talk about that. The book of Ezekiel has been referenced a lot by UFO scholars, and it very well could be describing some alien kind of stuff. The beings had human faces, the passage reads, and each had 2 wings spreading out upward, each wing touching that of the creature on either side, and each had 2 other wings covering its body. Each one went straight ahead. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went. And it goes on, but it's pretty trippy, right? Joe Rogan says, floated the theory that perhaps this was an hallucinogenic experience. I mean, to anybody that's done DMT or ayahuasca, really tripped on psychedelics, you read that and it feels sort of familiar. Holthouse said, "The glory of God, these visions of these beings." Yeah, so was the writer of Ezekiel on ayahuasca or something like that? Who knows, guys? Who knows? But yeah, I'm not advocating drug use. Don't do drugs. But at the same time, let me tell you how awesome ayahuasca is. Yeah, it's the stuff like that. I think, psychedelics, certain psychedelics seem, from my own experience in research, maybe it alters the filter that is the brain, if the brain is indeed a filter for consciousness. If we come into this reality from somewhere else, and part of ourselves, maybe our higher self, whatever, is on the outside of this reality, but connected to us, perhaps our brain is acting as a filter for that higher self or something like that. And maybe psychedelics can alter that and allow you greater connection than you otherwise have. So could some passages from the Bible be when people were in altered states and in a greater, connective phase? Hey, totally possible, guys. It could be UFOs, it could be drug use. Who knows what was going on there? But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, check this out. Sent to me by Chumbles. Thank you, Chumbles. This is so cool. This is a volcano, Mount Etna, spouting smoke rings. Look at that. Look at that. I mean, that puts Gandalf to shame, guys. I mean, that's awesome. That is a badass smoke ring from a volcano. Yeah, thank you, Jumbles. This is cool. Meanwhile, an interesting post from the Wand. This is the late UFO researcher, investigator Tony Dodd, who passed in 2009, potentially under nefarious circumstances. In this clip, Dodd describes an abduction event where an abductee pulls the eye lenses off a gray ET, exposing flashing red lights in the recesses. What?
I was talking to my American counterparts who are dealing with the abduction syndrome only the other day, and there's been a new twist of events on this abduction thing. What the American researchers and hypnotists have decided to do, because we were getting all these cases of abduction, we'd never got anything physical you could get hold of as proof, apart from many people with many scars and things like this. They were implanting into the abductee's mind that the next time that they were abducted, get hold of something and bring it back with you. If you can't do that, attack the Greys, who are much inferior to us physically, and if you can scratch them or something, you could get some of their skin under your fingernails. Something we could get for analysis, in other words. Well, one of the abductees they did this to, in very, very quick time after this incident, had an abduction experience. Now, she never got a chance to get her hands on anything, because when they had her on the table and that, she couldn't move or anything else. But at one stage, she was free, and she attacked one of these Greys, but this was in her bedroom. And she hit it in the eye, apparently, and knocked one of the big black eyes, apparently, out. Now, what happened was the Grey immediately disappeared. But, let me get you right. Once she knocked this, it was like an eye shield. It wasn't an eye as such. It was almost like her sunglass. She knocked this thing off, which fell to the floor of the bedroom, and there were little flashing red lights inside. But the thing about it is, of course, they recovered the thing that she'd knocked out of the alien's eye. And it was described to me as being a very thin type of membrane type of material, but it was exactly like a coloured sunglass. Anyway, they're looking at that at this moment in time. But the point of all this is, it is proved now, almost beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these Greys are actually biological androids, and that they are working for a higher figure.
Yeah, so the biological android thing has been discussed many times, and especially the smaller Greys seem to be biological androids or something like that. The taller ones might be actually organic creatures, maybe even the originators of that species. Who knows? Who knows? But Colonel Corso was talking about this back in the day when he described an alien autopsy, and he also described the lenses of these beings. these eye lenses, and from his information, it was from reverse engineering that sort of technology that we got our own night vision technology. Meanwhile, check this out. After 15 years of research into scientifically analyzing the Holy Shroud of Turin, Spanish artists completed a hyper-realistic sculpture of what Jesus Christ of Nazareth looked like, according to the Holy experience not too long ago during an ayahuasca ceremony. And I asked for a sign that that was legit, and a month later I got my UFO that made the cross in the sky. And then I got a confirmation on that. So, I definitely am interested in Jesus and feel that connection there. So, but hey, I understand if you're not with that. But yeah, very, very interesting that these artists have done that. And, let me know what you think. Meanwhile, check this out, guys. Look at that. Whoa, that is amazing. That is a big boy. Damn, look at that splash. Look at that splash. Don't get in the pool with that guy. There's not going to be any water left. Okay, but let's see some UFOs. Well, John Bell has put a compilation together of what he calls the Tinkerbell UFO or orb. And it's this particular UFO that shows up for him. And check out his channel, Florida Real UFO, and I'll link to it below. And he believes this is the same UFO or craft or whatever it is. Is it a being? I don't know what it is. But he describes it as very playful, and it shows up a lot. He thinks it has its own personality, and he can tell when it's there. He can tell that, hey, that's Tinkerbell. And it shows up all the time for him. And really neat, really neat. This is like a 2.5 minute compilation of Tinkerbell videos, and I'll link to it below, and you can watch the full thing at your leisure. And but it's really cool. Thank you, John, for putting this together for us, and giving us all an introduction to Tinkerbell. Meanwhile, from Grant Cameron, I thought this was interesting. Did you know that the right brain develops first? It does so by the time children are 4 years of age. The left brain, on the other hand, doesn't fully come online until children are approximately 7 years old. The reincarnation case studies of children reporting past lives shows that most recollection are between 2 and 4 years old. By 7, when the left brain comes online and the ego takes over, the past life memories disappear. Yeah, and that's the idea that the left brain is the more the male part, the male side of the brain with the more logic and all that kind of stuff, and the right brain is the more feminine, intuitive side of the brain, and that is actually the part of the brain that is more connected to the higher dimensions and may allow memories of things like reincarnation. Which is interesting. It's very annoying as a guy that's trying to tap into this stuff. I think there is a school of thought that a majority of mediums, for example, are female, which seems to be, from my own experience, the case. I don't know if there's actually been a study showing that or not, but it's very annoying if the ladies have the leg up on all this. Okay, since we're getting a little woo in this episode, here's Colonel John Alexander talking about a near-death experience. Something I've researched a lot, and just to tie it into the UFO subject, because it is tied into the UFO subject, people will have near-death experiences. They'll see Jesus hanging out with aliens. Did you know that almost a third of alien abductees are near-death experiencers? It's all connected, guys. It's all connected. But here's what Colonel John Alexander had to say.
That's an area that I'm working in at the moment. How do you transit the veil, if you will? And there seems to be some physical interaction. Just 2 weeks ago, today, as a matter of fact, I returned from Arthur Findlay College in the UK. It's in Essex, Stamford, and that's where they teach mediums. And these folks, we had about 45 in our group, and most of them were practicing mediums. We went because my wife was interested and now is doing communication. You go, well, communication with what, with who? Are there physical things?
How many of those mediums were female, John? How many? Do women really have the advantage in all this stuff? Ah,
Probably opening up, after death communication and life after death issues is a whole different topic. But remember, that's kind of where I came in on, well, not really, but was deeply involved in these areas. Certainly believe that there's some. Talking with Gary Schwartz, who's kind of the key researcher in these after-death communication and with mediums. And one of the questions he had to me is, well, are we talking about angels? Are there archangels? And, a whole hierarchy and whatnot. And again, by the way, I would mention Eben Alexander, who is not a relative of any kind, but I put great credence in his story because he was a neurosurgeon for 25 years, thought all this stuff was nonsense before he had his own NDE, but talks about he spent almost a week in deep coma.
wow.
And
Yeah, he spent almost a week in deep coma with a disease that attacked his brain. And as a neurologist, he knew that he should have been more or less brain dead because of that disease. And he had a fantastic and amazing near-death experience. One of the most famous near-death experiences, and I will let you, seek that out and watch the full thing. But it's, well worth hearing him talk about his near-death experiences. Dr. Eben Alexander, really great near-death experiences. It does get kind of trippy, as they tend to do. But I love it that Colonel John Alexander is talking about near-death experiences because more and more people, I think, are waking up to all of that. Leslie Kean and her book and her documentary, and more people. Yeah, Bob Bigelow and his consciousness studies. Essay contest where Jeffrey Mishlove won. And more and more people are getting into this stuff, the consciousness stuff, the afterlife stuff, and realizing not only is it real, but also it has a huge connection to UFOs. So, but let me know what you think about all of that and everything else covered today in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I'd sure appreciate it. Smash the like button and the subscribe button and the bell, of course, to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Join me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, links below. Love to see you guys there. If you wanted to support Cosmic Road in an even bigger way, consider grabbing a coffee mug or a t-shirt in the merch store below, or become a channel member because channel members are rock stars, and they also get to see videos frequently, hours ahead of everybody else. Meanwhile, there's plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.